So it's been a few months since I've made any videos. I've been incredibly busy, so much so I've lost a lot of my hair apparently. But what topic should I choose to come back in on? How about emotional support snakes? Actually, one of the requests I often get from my patients is whether or not I would be willing to write a letter for an emotional support animal. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about what an emotional support animal actually is and is not, especially when compared to service animals. Now, as many people know, it's easy enough to go onto Amazon and order a little vest for just about any critter out there that says emotional support animal. But does this mean that you can take your ferret into a restaurant or your cat with you to school if they're designated as an emotional support animal? Well, the answer is no. Well, not necessarily. I'll talk about that more at the end of the video. Now, before I get into the details about emotional support and service animals, I would really appreciate it if you would click the like button down below, especially if this information is helpful to you. And I would be extra appreciative if you would be willing to subscribe to my channel, since that's what keeps me excited and kind of reminds me that you're out there paying attention. So let me start by explaining how an emotional support animal differs from a service animal. First of all, the Americans with Disabilities Act only recognizes dogs and miniature horses as service animals. These animals must provide a specific service or do a specific task for their handlers. An example is a seeing eye dog, which is trained to help its human navigate, or a seizure dog, which is trained to detect and respond to seizures in advance and often can help prevent falls or other injuries, or a dog that assists with mobility and independence for somebody who is restricted to a wheelchair. Each of these animals has an extensive training, usually greater than a year, in order to perform their specific task. As a result of the complexity and depth of their training, these animals are often extremely expensive to obtain, usually in the realm of $10,000 to $30,000 a piece. Luckily, there are a lot of organizations out there who are willing to help train them and help provide them to those who really need them and can't afford them. It's because these animals are trained to perform necessary tasks. They are considered indispensable to their handlers and are protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act. This means that they can go anywhere the public is allowed with few to no restrictions. This includes restaurants, staying in hotels that normally do not allow pets, these are not pets, grocery stores, schools, or anywhere else that the public can go. Also, as a result of their training, these animals are extremely well behaved, respond quickly to the commands of their handlers, and rarely, if ever, act in a way that is dangerous or unexpected. Now, there also happens to be a designation for psychiatric service dogs, which are not to be confused with emotional support animals. These dogs are also trained to do specific tasks or respond in very specific ways to their handlers. Tasks can include providing medication reminders to their people, tactile grounding through nuzzling or licking. They can be trained to lay across or press up against their handlers during a flashback or panic attack. There are a lot more things that these animals can do, but the key is that they are specifically trained to do a task. Of course, as a result, they are considered working service animals and are equally protected by the ADA. Also, they are just as expensive to train and difficult to obtain. Now, an emotional support animal is also not a therapy animal. Therapy animals are trained to be taken into places like hospitals and rehabilitation facilities or other facilities to help comfort patients. Now, they are not trained to be therapeutic specifically or to perform a specific task, and they are not animals that belong to an individual with a disability. For instance, at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, we will often have therapy animals come visit the kids who love them. Now, these animals still have to go through some training, which ensures that they will be well behaved, have a mild temperament, and are predictable. But they don't have the same accessibility rights as service animals do, for instance. So finally, what is an emotional support animal? Well, interestingly, it can be any accepted domesticated animal that is recognized as a legal pet, including fish, that a psychiatrist or another medical professional has deemed helpful to an individual with a mental health diagnosis. It's well known that petting furry animals can lower our blood pressure, increase the parasympathetic tone, which is the opposite of being anxious or scared, that animals can act as grounding mechanisms when emotions are running high. The only real requirement, and this does vary a bit from state to state, is that the owner must have a psychiatric diagnosis and that the animal must be helpful in mitigating or reducing symptoms. Now, I'm a firm believer in the power of animals to help people, and generally, I'm pretty open to the idea of signing off on an emotional support animal for my patients. One of my biggest expectations, however, and something that is generally understood and expected for all support and service animals, is that the animal has to be under control, be well behaved, and not present a nuisance to other individuals. However, I'm also very clear with my patients that a letter for an emotional support animal is not carte blanche to take their animal with them anywhere they go. As a matter of fact, about the only thing that having an emotional support animal letter guarantees is the right for that individual to keep that animal in a place that normally does not allow pets. This includes homeowners associations, co-ops, landlords, or property managers who have no pet policies. An emotional support animal with a qualified letter is supposed to be permitted in these circumstances, and failure to do so is considered discrimination. However, people often want to be able to take their animals to school, to work, into restaurants, or other normal places that dogs and other animals aren't allowed to go. And there is absolutely no guaranteed legal accommodation for these animals in this regard. This can vary from state to state and locality to locality, but there's no federal ADA protection. Now, it's true that a lot of places don't know this, and with a well-behaved emotional support animal in a little vest, they may not say anything, but they are not protected by the Americans for Disabilities Act. And it's very much up to the school, the business, the local laws, and such as to whether or not these animals will be accommodated. The rights that they do have are limited to living areas. Airlines have also gotten far more strict about emotional support animals. They cannot refuse working animals or dogs, but they can refuse emotional support animals, and they often do. So this brings me to the question of emotional support snakes. Ever since I was a middle school teacher, I've wanted to raise and breed corn snakes. They are amazing, beautiful, and docile little creatures with an almost infinite genetic range and variation. I have a few patients who have actually bought snakes as pets and have found them to be very therapeutic and soothing. Though I understand that they may not be soothing for everyone. So I asked myself, can a snake be an emotional support animal? Well, yes, they can. They can help patients ground themselves, they can be very calming for their owners, and are generally very well behaved with little to no disturbance to neighbors, as long as they stay in their tanks. As I said earlier, any domesticated animal can qualify, and as a result, there are many mice, rabbits, birds, hedgehogs, rats, and ferrets that have qualified as emotional support animals. Except in California, where it's illegal to keep ferrets as pets, so they therefore cannot be considered emotional support animals in that state. Even fish, as I've mentioned before, can be considered an emotional support animal if an argument for what they provide to their people is reasonable. Ever since my snake Nagini laid eggs last month, I've decided to create a little subtopic here talking about how you raise and take care of these beautiful creatures. So if this sounds interesting, follow along with me as they hatch. I'll be talking a little bit about, once again, care and the whole process, and hopefully it'll be interesting to you. Now, if you don't like snakes, I would stick to my other playlists, as they are guaranteed to be snake-free. The biggest problem I'm having is trying to figure out how to get a snake to wear a little vest. So actually, vests are not required for emotional support animals, just so you know. Please, really would appreciate it if you'd like this video and subscribe to this channel, even if you don't like snakes, since I have a lot of advice and information to offer when it comes to mental health. Listen, remember, mental health and physical health, they're the same thing. I'll see you in the next video.